Hi, this is Bria from the Sci-Fi and Sunshine podcast, and today's episode is not live. I've been going live for the past, how many episodes have I even done now? 4? I don't even know. This might be the 5th episode. We'll see. I'll figure it out and I'll correct it in the show notes. So yes, welcome to today's very special episode of the Sci-Fi and Sunshine podcast. I am bringing you literal sunshine today because I was on the radio at Joy on Paper for a sci-fi hour in Clearwater, Florida, which is just about 30 to 40 minutes north of where I live in St. Pete. I drive up to that radio station and do a monthly sci-fi hour and interview authors. I had author Philip Wilder and author Stephen Burnett today with their books, both debut novelists. Philip had a book called Jake Rogers' Planet, a YA sci-fi adventure, which, to sum it up very quickly, it's Hatchet in space. It is awesome. And then Stephen has a book called Above the Circle of Earth, and it's a Mars colonization story that's very heavy in the faith themes and excellent book as well. So I had a lot of fun interviewing these authors today, which is one of the reasons why I'm not going live today. I left the radio station in Clearwater, drove down the beach. I'm currently in Indian Rocks Beach. I left the radio station in Clearwater, drove down Gulf Boulevard, which is the beach road right here that just follows along all the Gulf beaches in the area, and basically just searched for that magical spot because I'm gonna show you right now. The beach is packed today. I'm blind. Like, it's so hard for me to see the screen right now. But the beach is packed. The water looks lovely today. Here. So you get the picture. Trying to find parking right now. It's very busy. It's 80 degrees today. It's basically perfect Florida weather right now, where it's lower humidity but still very lovely. So this is one of the reasons why I actually named this podcast Sci-Fi and Sunshine, because I live in the Sunshine State and I live in the Sunshine City and it just seemed very fitting. And I particularly, so I'm gonna plug myself for a second. I am working on a sci-fi novel that it's called Ring Around the Sun. It's a work in progress still, and it is very much like a bright, hopeful future type. It's not dystopian, so I can't say, like, there is this like caste system and there's this future society that's a bit rough to live in, but it's not a dystopian. It's more on the brighter side. So that also is tied into why the podcast is the name that it is, because that's what I like to write. So little plug for myself. And basically I'm going to use this podcast to, it's going to be a little brief. I'm going to share a little tiny clip of the radio show that I just did, and plugging an author that I just read this book. Granted, it's fantasy. It's actually not sci-fi, but it's my podcast. I can get away with it. So I did a plug for his book on the show, and I'm obviously plugging Philip Wilder and his book, and Stephen Burnett and his book. And one of the things about being an author is being able to support each other as authors and being able to promote each other and spread the word about good books that so often there are really good books out there that unfortunately it's so saturated. I mean, most authors know this. The market is so saturated. The nature of having something like Amazon where you can click a button and your book is published, there are millions of books that get published every year. So finding a good book is that much harder because there's a lot to sift through. But word of mouth, in my opinion, still goes a long way to be able to tell people, okay, I read this book and I love it, so I want to share it with you and hopefully get this author some more exposure so that their very excellent book doesn't just get lost in the shuffle. Because things with technology, and that brings us back to sci-fi. So many things change so quickly in recent time, and the advancements are exponential. It's not addition anymore, it's multiplication with how much stuff advances and changes and how quickly it does. I think I'll use this opportunity. So I'm going to share the plug. In fact, I'm going to pause because it's a separate video that I'm going to insert right here. So let's jump over to this plug about this author's book, and then I'll come right back to share what I wanted to talk about with some sci-fi technology stuff, and I'll be right back. So check out this author. Give a shout out to another author that I don't know that you are aware of him. He was at Realm Makers. I want you to have him on your podcast if you can. So his name's Jim Doherty. He wrote this incredible YA fantasy that I absolutely love. It's called The Great Awakening. So I'm giving him a plug. So if you need it, I'll send you his info because his book is so good. It's my current favorite YA fantasy right now. So I know you interview authors. You obviously are a supporter of authors, and you have Lore Haven, the magazine, right? And then The Fantastical Truth is the podcast. Okay, so that's a little plug for my author friend, Jim Doherty. I am serious. I loved his book Psychotically, and so does my son. My son, we listened to the audiobook, and it was like a couple days later, my son's like, can we do that again? And he is not, that is not his norm. He does not always do that for a book, because we do a lot of reading, as you might guess. Like we were big on reading. So when my son says stuff like that, I know he really likes the book. So, and it's not even necessarily geared toward his age. He's 7. I think if I had to guess, this book is more geared toward maybe 12 to 15 range, or maybe even a little bit older than that. But my son loves it. He's 7 and he loves it. And he seems to grasp a lot of the concepts in this book. So that's another thing I didn't mention specifically on the plug, so I want to mention that. It's an awesome book for kids. It's great. So that's author plug time, and moving on. Again, I'm going to have this be a shorter Sci-Fi and Sunshine podcast episode. But I just sometimes when I have the radio show, it really gets my wheels spinning, because I talk to authors about technology, and I talk to them about what's happening in the real world and what's happening in science fiction. And sometimes it is just those two things are blending together. It's no longer science fiction. It's actually reality now. And so when I think about what's happening with AI and the language models, and some of you, if any of you have watched any or listened to any of the radio shows that I've done, the Sci-Fi Hour at Joy on Paper Radio, I've talked to many authors, and authors are in many different places. We all, just like any group of people, have a variety of takes on where things are. And I've had authors who are just like loving all the AI stuff, and there's authors who are very leery of it, and I am one of those authors. I'm very leery. I relate to Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park when he says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think about whether they should. So one of my all-time favorite lines, and I've shared that before on the radio show, but I just thought I'll get it out here on my podcast too, so people can know that is one of my all-time favorite movie lines, because it is so apropos to our current day and the things that are being done, and whether just speeding along, like, is there any pause to look at ethical issues? Is there a pause? Because science and ethics are almost mutually exclusive, not necessarily totally, but you have to insert ethics. They're not kind of natural to the sciences. So it's a different realm. And if ethics are not being explored or discussed, and it's just forward with the technology, just move. I think a lot of dangers, things that can be harmful to humanity, then can be either perpetuated or just brought into the world. So I interviewed this author, Alan Brocken, who wrote a book. His book was also a fantasy, actually, but I wanted to talk to him because he's a tech guy in the tech world who works for a big tech company, and he deals with AI. He's an AI specialist. And when I interviewed him for Sci-Fi Hour, it was so eye-opening about, the understanding of why these language models like ChatGPT are the way that they are. And most people, you're not instinctively aware of how these models are trained, what things are being input, and the errors. So he did a really good job of explaining how AI language models, they scrape the internet for, it's basically this extremely advanced algorithm, and the chips that are used, and the reason they can compute and process so quickly, the chips are so small, not quantum level per se, but there's almost an element of that because there is a machine that makes these chips that are so small, but there are errors. And this was common knowledge. Like this, he specifically had asked me not to mention which company he works for. And I said, are there certain things I can ask you or not ask you? And he said, I can talk about this part, about the errors and how these language models like ChatGPT have these errors because it's happening over every AI language model. Gemini with Google, and Pilot, or is it Copilot with Microsoft, and I'm sure Grok, like with X. So, and there's been news articles. Author Daniel Schwabauer, I had a great conversation with him. His book included some heavy AI themes. Operation Grendel is the name of his book, another author plug. He had kind of alerted me at this time, this was a couple years ago now, what the training idea, like the idea of how to train these AI language models. And we're talking artificial intelligence. Sorry, I should probably spell that out if you don't know what I'm saying when I say AI. So there were news articles that he pointed out that these, that there were people who are doing the inputting, and in terms of like teaching the language model how to function, that included teaching it how to lie. And I kid you not, these are articles out there. You can find them. Like that's not a secret either. It's not like proprietary information. There are people openly talking about that and how it was happening and how it is still happening. And that's, I believe that is important information for people to be aware of, especially because the children of today will grow up and ChatGPT will have been in their life their whole life. And they might believe that it's a reliable resource. And it's actually not. It's a language model, which means it's not always going to be fact-based. And this is where Alan Brocken, the tech guy from the big tech company, explained that it's scraping data to find the best answer based on all the information that it can get, basically. So obviously they've input a lot of information for these AI language models, but there are many, many, many examples of situations where if you ask it a very common sense question, it will spit back a total wrong answer. And so those are things being discussed in the tech world even now and continuing, because they're working, all these companies that have all these are working very hard to perfect so that there aren't all these errors. But I just, for me, I have these opinions that like when I was in school, when I was younger, we did not have much of this type of thing. When I was in college, obviously, not obviously, if you don't know how old I am, when I was in college, yes, there was internet. Yes, like there was internet in the 90s, there was even in the 80s, but when it was more thing that you actually used in school, for me, it was way more in college, becoming just, this is part of what you do. But I still relied heavily on the library, my college library. I went to Flagler College. I did so much research, and some of the things that were involved with research and study I was an English major, so English papers, that kind of thing. There were databases, internet databases that would have all this information, and it was input information manually by people. It wasn't, well, of course there were algorithms back then as well. They just were not this advanced. But, you could get the Britannica encyclopedia online at some point, and then there was a point where it was just a book that you get at the library and it's in print, or you can order the entire A to Z of the Encyclopedia Britannica. But kids today I don't know that they even know what that is, which is kind of funny to me. But those types of things just kind of fascinate me, kind of worry me a little bit, that kids don't necessarily know how to vet information, to even find out how do I know that what I'm hearing when I ask a question to ChatGPT or whatever, how do I know that it's accurate? How do I know that it's true? And I think it'll be a challenge to convince a child who's born in the last few years and then lives on, through the next, hopefully many years. It might be really hard to convince them that this language model is gonna be wrong sometimes, and it's going to be inaccurate sometimes. And some people use it for the purpose that it was actually designed for, which is to perfect is not the right word, to polish writing that you're already doing, or to do it for you, to take a few key phrases and spit out a whole paragraph, or spit out a whole instruction manual, or whatever it is. And as a writer, I am not really on board with some of that. Like, I'm just not. Sorry, everybody. You don't have to agree with me. It's okay. But I think the necessity for human writers is going to far outweigh the need to spit out data so quickly, just for the sake of spitting out data quickly, because this AI can come up with something that's pretty good to save you time. I mean, there's a whole discussion that can be had there. So I talk to a lot of friends and people some people just love using ChatGPT, and I'm using that one kind of across the board, as I don't know that everybody just uses that one. There's other ones. So whatever one they use, whatever AI language model, I talk to people who love it. They love the convenience. They love being able to and some people and some people aren't writers and they don't want to be, and I do understand that. And some people do it because their job requires them to fill out a report, and they're like, oh, can this thing just do it for me? Yay, it did it, and it's great, and it's fine. So there's obviously application, and there's time and place for that kind of thing, but I really do not like how the training behind all these, there's been training for these language models that are teaching it to lie on purpose. And I don't understand why that would even need to be a thing. Like, I don't know what the people, like, I would have to go back to read the articles, because it's been a couple years since I read those articles. I can't quite remember what the reason was given, that, like, why teach it to lie? Like, why is that good for us? And the last thing I'll mention, because I'm going to wrap this up, I gotta actually head out, is the robots that are learning Kung Fu. If you go to my Facebook page, Bria Burton, and you can friend me, there I have this tongue-in-cheek AI named Cricket who took over my Facebook page. It's all part of my writing. I have short stories featuring this AI named Cricket who's real feisty, and she tries to take over the world all the time. So Cricket posted recently, I say Cricket, of course it's me, but like me posing as Cricket. She posted these kung fu robots because, you know, she's pretending they're her robots and she's going to use them to take over the world. That's only so much tongue-in-cheek because, hello. When you see the video, it's like mind-blowing why people are and I can't remember the name of the company. It's like Unitree or something. Why are they creating robots that know kung fu and they're doing like kick moves and the person is there like trying to stave off the robot? And I'm like, this is not good. This is not good. Have you not seen the Terminator movies? No? Time to watch them. Anyway, that's kind of my ramble for today. Wanted to plug some authors, so I'm glad I did that. I wanted some sun, and I wanted to give you all sun and give you some beach time. Yay! This is just, yeah, a very lovely, wonderful beach, Indian Rocks Beach, not too far from me. So I have this outro that I wrote down, and I don't have it memorized, but it's something like, go out and be sunshine to the world in this sci-fi world that we live in. So thanks for watching. Bye.